Thank you all for joining today. I have my tech team back there already laughing, and so that's very nice of them. Thank you guys. This is Contending for the Faith, our show every Wednesday at 2:30, where we look at things that are in the news right now and the Christian worldview, how it relates to our culture, and then answering some questions that people may have if they have some questions. And so we're excited to have you joining us. Thank you for being here. And we're going to jump right in with the first item on the agenda, and that's going to take us a little bit north. Where is north of America? Canada. And when you go up to Canada, there's a lot going on right now. We actually have two news items from Canada, and so I'll just do those back to back. The first one, which will go a little bit quicker, is something we talked about a couple weeks ago, and that is a Canadian pastor who was imprisoned for holding services during the COVID lockdowns there because it was a violation of their health department's rules. And so they decided that he would be imprisoned for not agreeing to stopping sharing or gathering together in that way. He has actually been released, and so that pastor was released. I think there was enough of an international outcry at this point about them locking up a pastor for a meeting. That seems like there are many violations right now of religious freedom, but in the Western world, that's pretty straightforward, and that's something that did cause a lot of uproar. So thank you to all those who have been praying. Pastor James Coates is his name, and he was released a few days ago. And he was released without having to agree to basically a gag order of not repeating what he did. And so keep him in prayer. They're still trying to run a few charges against him, but he is out of prison. There's just one charge remaining, I believe. But now something a little more interesting happening with our Canadian friends up north. We all know, or at least we're all going to find out very soon if we don't know already, that the number one issue really facing the cultural shift into the secular kind of progressive ideology right now is on the topic of transgenderism. So we've gone through about 30 years of this LGBTQ plus movement and agenda really being pushed. And right now, the highlight of it, the thing that is most adamantly being pushed is the transgender movement. This is where we not only say, hey, male and female isn't the only valid form of marriage. That was the first step to say that, gay marriage, that homosexual marriage is something that we should allow. We've now reached a point where we're now just abolishing male, female altogether. We're trying to abolish these kind of concrete, biologically grounded ideas and realities. And up north, we have something very, very disturbing happening. There's a 14-year-old girl, and I did say girl, who identifies male. All right, a 14-year-old girl identifies male. And this girl wants to begin going through treatment. Treatment consists of hormone blockers, hormone treatment, puberty blockers, and then eventually sex reassignment surgery, which is an irreversible surgery that mutilates a young girl's body in order to try to make them think that they are male. Now, when you look at this case here, the girl has a father and a mother, because you always have to have a father or a mother to come into the world, and the father is objecting to this transitioning of his daughter. And this has been something that's been going on for some time now, to where the father doesn't want his daughter, who is 14, again, to be making these life-altering decisions that will leave her infertile and completely changed biologically. Doesn't think that she's ready to make those decisions at the young age of 14. Now, in the past, the courts in Canada have decided to place a gag order on the father and told him that he is not allowed to speak out about this matter. He's not allowed to vocalize his opinion. He's not allowed to try to convince his daughter to pursue other avenues of restoration and counseling that may help her understand her actual identity as created by God. And he has not followed, in some instances, the gag order. He continues to refer to his daughter as a girl instead of a boy, continues to call her by the female name that was given to her by him and her mother at birth. And we are now at the point where the father is now on trial, and if memory serves, is facing up to 15 years of prison for not going along with his daughter's desire to be a girl and not calling her a him and speaking out and saying, this isn't right, she shouldn't be doing this. That is very disturbing, that something so fundamental to reality as male and female, when you look at day 6 of creation, something that is really at the center point of what it means to be human, that God created them male and female, that the most distinct characteristic or difference within humanness is that there are two kinds. There are these two brands, so to say. There is male and there is female, and there's this complementing relationship between them. To be imprisoned, potentially, because you hold to a biblical traditional view, that's frightening. And you might expect this, in some country far off somewhere else that has these, insane laws, but this is here. This is Canada. These types of things are happening in Europe right now, and our current administration would love to see these types of things happen here. This is not far from home, and this is not far away from coming home. We should all be outraged by this, that the father who is trying to protect his 14-year-old girl from making a decision she is not equipped to make at this point is going to potentially go to prison for it in a country that claims to be free. And in reality, this is what we're learning, is that, you can say you're a free country, you can claim you promote freedom of speech, but to lock someone up, or to at least try to lock someone up for calling someone a girl who is a girl but wants to be a man, that's not freedom of speech. And that's really what we've faced this entire time with the LGBTQ plus ideology. It is not freedom to have differences. It is not tolerating one another even though we may disagree. It is this idea that either you are going to agree with, go along with, and embrace the agenda, or you're going to be silenced for not doing so. And as a church, and as Christians, and as people who understand that God is the one who determines male and female, God is the one who decides what we are born as, God is the one who ordained that while we were in our mother's womb, to then try to overturn that, to take a stand for that, is something we must do. We have to continue to take a stand for that which is true, even though it may mean we get in trouble. And so kudos to this father. Kudos to him for taking a stand for his daughter, even at the risk of being severely punished himself. The church could learn something even if we face consequences, even if it could cost us, even if it means prison potentially, that we continue to stand for what is true. We can continue, in our case, to preach the gospel and to share the good news of salvation through repentance and faith in Jesus Christ. That means talking about sin. That means talking about the problem. But it also means presenting a great solution, Jesus Christ. We're now going to go across the sea. We're going to switch gears a little bit out of the LGBTQ or modern kind of cultural issues. There was a report, and it was on a few different news channels, of a rare meteorite. This is great, all right? A rare meteorite, this is how the headline reads, fell on UK driveway, may contain ingredients for life. Well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that just fascinating? You remember like a month or two back, I think I talked about it on here. We talked about kind of the different theories on how life came about, right? The different ideas in the evolutionary ideology on where life could have come from. Because life is very complex, and it's very difficult to understand how life could have originated here on planet Earth. And so they consistently try to paint this picture. Maybe life came from somewhere else. Maybe life didn't originate on planet Earth, but actually came from somewhere in outer space, like aliens planted it here, or maybe there are these bacteria that came from these other planets where life originally started and they seeded life here on planet Earth. So this has got people excited because, maybe it helps their theory a little bit, which it doesn't, but we'll get there. So this meteorite hits in this driveway. And you'll notice right away, may contain ingredients for life. We're not even sure if it does yet, but why not throw the headline out there? Because it gets people to read. So it may contain ingredients for life. So almost 300 grams of meteorite have been collected. That's not a lot at all, but have been collected from the small town somewhere in the UK here with names that I don't pretend I know how to pronounce, by scientists who said the rock was formed of carbonaceous chondrite. They say this is, very rare for a meteorite to be composed of that. And they said sometimes we think that these meteorites, they can contain amino acids, and I quote, the ingredients for life. Couple notes. First, we don't even know if it does contain amino acids, okay? It says these types of meteorites could contain amino acids, so let's write an article as if it does contain amino acids, even though we haven't tested for them yet. And then let's take that and blow it up and say, may contain the ingredients for life. And ignore the fact that there is a lot more to forming life than simply amino acids. So we have this idea that maybe this little meteorite has amino acids in it, okay? We're not sure if that's true, but we'll set that aside for a moment. Let's assume it has amino acids, okay? Let's just say it has amino acids. It has tons of amino acids. Let's say it has more amino acids than it has meteor rock, which would be impossible, but let's just go with it for the sake of the argument. Does that mean that life could come from outer space? No. No, you see, just having amino acids, you could pour a bazillion gallons, you couldn't because that's a lot, but you could pour 1,000,000 gallons of amino acids into the oceans of Earth, and life isn't going to magically come springing out of those amino acids. because life takes a lot more than just amino acids. You see, amino acids, they are one ingredient to life, one of many ingredients. And then even within amino acids, you have dozens of different types. And so if you have amino acids, here are a couple problems just to consider along the way. The first problem that you could consider is amino acids, when they're in life, they have to all be of one sort. There's kind of these two different geometric options to amino acids, and when they're created in a natural environment, they produce what are called both left-handed and right-handed, just speaking to the geometric construction of the amino acids, left and right-handed amino acids. So if this asteroid lands, or this meteor lands, and it has all these amino acids, let's say it has 1 million amino acids, now you need to somehow narrow it down to just left-handed amino acids. But the problem is it's always 50-50, and the odds of happening to collect in a 50-50 mix of amino acids only one type, mathematically absurd. But let's say you do it. Let's say you get over that. You then have to figure out how to line all these amino acids up in a very specific order in order to form polypeptides. Now, in order to know what order the amino acids need to be lined up, you need something called a ribosome, which is a micro machine that is made of proteins, which are made of amino acids, which you don't have yet, but we'll ignore that for a moment too. So you get them all lined up, okay? You get them all lined up in the right order to form a protein. But then you got another problem. You see, the average protein is about 400 polypeptides. So you need 400 amino acids all in a very specific order. You can't change one of them. You need a very specific order in order to make a polypeptide. But then you need different machinery to fold this polypeptide to make it really a protein. But then there are thousands of different types of proteins, so you need to luck out thousands of times just to get the proteins required for the simplest cell. But that doesn't make a cell, because there's a lot more than just proteins to a cell. You need other things like, I don't know, DNA, for example. You know, the thing that makes our cells and our body and organisms know how to function and how to run. So just saying that you have maybe a few amino acids is a far cry from actually having life, a far cry. And we don't even know if it has amino acids. So to paint this picture of meteorite falls may contain all the ingredients for life, nothing close to reality. But again, when you want to reject God, when you want to reject that He is the creator, when you want to say everything happens naturally, you now need to come up with some way to explain how life is here. And they have done a lot of research on planet Earth, and they figured out we're not really sure how to get it started. And the natural conclusion would be maybe something from space, maybe aliens, right? Ignoring the fact that it's not so simple as saying, hey, life came from space. There's a lot of obstacles to that, like where did the life come from still? You know, just because you can't form it here, you know, you can't form life here doesn't mean that suddenly on Mars you're going to have a lot of success forming life. We have the same periodic table there as we do here, and we can't even seem to figure theoretically how life could get started. So no, nothing close to life starting. All right, we have one question to address, which is timely because I had some students this morning talking about this question, and then we'll be done here. It's a simple question, and it is, why is hell eternal when the sin we commit is temporary and limited to a small lifetime? So the idea here behind this question is that God is unjust because the Bible says people go to an eternity in hell if they do not believe in Jesus Christ and are not saved from their sins. So why is it possible for God to be just in our mind and yet we do a little bit of sin throughout our life and we get an eternity of punishment afterwards. Two thoughts I'll share with you, and then we'll be done. First, nothing about the description of hell given in Scripture paints a picture that those who are in hell are somehow of great remorse and wishing they could now follow Jesus Christ. That is to say, when all restraint on mankind is removed and the full evil of the hearts of man is free to unleash itself for all of eternity, that does not result in mankind wanting to submit to God. That results in them wanting to continue in their sin and hatred towards God, so that the punishment of hell never ends because sinners remain sinful until the end. They are rebels for all of eternity, and therefore the punishment must go throughout all of eternity. So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, a little deeper, was well formulated by Jonathan Edwards. And I'm actually going to read a quote here. Jonathan Edwards, now follow carefully. Okay, this is a complicated quote. But Jonathan Edwards does wonders to clarify this. He says the following, and I quote, "The crime of one being despising and casting contempt on another is proportionably more or less heinous, as he was under greater or lesser obligation to obey him, and therefore if there be any being that we are under infinite obligation to love and honor and obey, the contrary towards him must be infinitely faulty. Our obligation to love, honor, and obey any being is in proportion to his loveliness, honorableness, and authority. God is a being infinitely lovely because he hath infinite excellency and beauty. So sin against God, being a violation of infinite obligation, must be a crime infinitely heinous and so deserving infinite punishment. The eternity of the punishment of ungodly men renders it infinite and therefore renders no more than proportionably to the heinousness of what they are guilty of." What that meant is this. We get this in our judicial system too. This is the same thing. You say, how can someone sin for 40 years and then they get a eternity of punishment for it? That seems unjust. But what matters is not how long the crime was being committed, but the severity of the crime itself. Simple illustration. It took someone can walk into a grocery store and they can steal a candy bar in 10 minutes, or someone can walk into a grocery store and they can kill 10 people in 10 minutes. It matters not how long it took. It matters not the length of time that the offense was going on. What matters is the offense itself. When you look at sin, the problem people end up having with hell is not a misunderstanding or is not that Christians have a skewed view of justice and it's disproportionate. It's that people who struggle with hell typically have a low understanding, a diminished understanding of the severity of sin. So the reason hell is eternal is because sin is that bad, because sin is an offense against an infinitely worthy God. Here's another kind of way to paint this and hopefully tie this together, and we'll bring it to a close. If I were to punch Hitler, you probably would have no problem with it, because the severity of the crime, as Edwards says, is proportional to the worthiness of the offended party. Hitler's not very worthy. You don't care if I punch Hitler. Now, if I go to the grocery store and I punch some random person, you probably have a problem now, because we assume they probably weren't deserving of being punched. Take it to the next level. If I punch someone at the grocery store, you think I should be fined, right? Maybe something for assault, okay? Now, if I go to a daycare and I punch children, babies, let's say I go and I start punching a baby, now you want me locked up in prison for a long time. And the reason why is because the heinousness of the crime is tied to the worthiness of the offended party. A baby is absolutely undeserving of that treatment and is more worthy of our care, love, and comfort. So to violate the baby and assault the baby is way worse than assaulting Hitler. You then have to understand, and this is the key, God is infinitely worthy, which means any crime as a violation against our obligation to follow and love God is an infinite crime and thus deserves infinite punishment. And because we are limited man, we can only pay an infinite punishment over eternal time. So those are two ways to look at that question. That's the only question, though, for today. So for now, we are going to wrap it up. We'll be back next week, though, 2:30 here on Facebook and possibly YouTube. I don't know if they're streaming it to YouTube right now, but we should get it up to YouTube if we're not already. If you have any questions about the Bible, feel free to ask them. Put them in the comments section, and I will go through and we'll try to get those addressed next week. But for now, you have a blessed week. For those who are here in Pueblo, those at Family Worship Center, we have a Easter performance coming up next week as well. And so you can sign up at www.group.life/Easter, and you can attend that as well. It's actually a very apologetic-y Easter performance, and we hope you'll join us for that. But have a great rest of your day. Ask your questions before next time, and we'll see you next week.